welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you check out the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda along with the history and philosophy, and I also give an introduction to the 3 doshas or mind-body types of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And now, here's the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. I am thrilled to have Acharya Shunya here. She is an internationally recognized lineage-based spiritual teacher who awakens health and consciousness with Vedic spiritual teachings and Ayurveda lifestyle. She is founder of Vedika Global, a wisdom school and spirituality community in California, and president of the California Association of Ayurvedic Medicine. She is a designated advisor to the Government of India Ministry of Health on Yoga and Ayurveda. And she was named amongst the top 100 Ayurveda and Yoga trailblazers by Spirituality and Health magazine. Shunya is a sought-after speaker, delivering keynote addresses to audiences including the World Ayurveda Congress, the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, and the University of California, Berkeley. She is also the author of a beautiful book called Ayurveda Lifestyle Wisdom, which is a complete prescription to optimize your health, prevent disease, and live with vitality and joy. Acharya Shunya, it is such an honor to have you here on the podcast today, and I want you to thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
I'm delighted. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I should let the audience know that Acharya means master teacher. So Acharya Shunya is indeed a master teacher. You can see by her wealth of experience. Now, Acharya, in the introduction, I mentioned that you're a lineage-based spiritual teacher. And I love the story in your book of your relationship with your grandfather and guru, Baba. It's such a beautiful story of this special bond and also how it sowed the seed of this ancient wisdom of Ayurveda in you from a very young age. Can you please tell me about this relationship and your journey with Ayurveda?
I think I was really fortunate. I was just maybe karmically mandated to be born in this family in this holy city called Ayodhya in northern India, which is the birthplace of Lord Rama, who's an avatar of Vishnu. And this is a very ancient city. It's a holy city. It's full of temples. And the city is mentioned in the Rig Veda, the oldest holy text coming out of India. And in fact, in Ayurveda tradition also, the body itself is called Ayodhya, where your spirit, which is God, lives, you know. So Ayodhya is a very symbolic place. And for me to be born in a family that has been teaching and living the Vedic wisdom and its sciences of Ayurveda, Yoga, and Vedanta for, untold generations was very fortunate. But I was just a child and I didn't know, when you're born inside a family, you don't know what's the significance. You don't know that you'll be living in America 5 decades later and talking to Colette. It's just, but it was amazing to be with this beautiful, gentle soul. And the whole world came for his darshan and to meet him and to get his blessings or to get his healing advice. But he took interest in me because maybe he had decided he wanted to groom me. And we would have these long conversations. We would walk to the river every morning. And I have some descriptions about that in the book. And, he would do his Sandhya rituals, which is the morning dawn rituals with the Gayatri mantra. And he would talk to me about health, life, consciousness, hope, and the eternal nature of our existence, which is beyond death and beyond disease. And, I was really a child, Colette, but he was talking to my soul. And I never wrote them down or I had an iPhone to, record him. But all of this went in. And when I started writing my book, I didn't plan to talk about little Shunya and Baba, but it all came out because it was my foundation. Mm-hmm. And so my inner child wanted to co-author the book with Acharya Shunya. So being part of the lineage has been awesome. It's also been a bit difficult because you have to work on yourself and live up to some of the ideals you teach. So as a human being, it has been a wonderful invitation to step into my light boldly. And I'm enjoying myself.
It's such a beautiful story, the stories that you've put in the book about the daily rituals you had with your grandfather. And can you tell me a little bit about your own healing journey with Ayurveda?
Yeah, Colette, when I was in my teens, maybe around 15 or 16, I started having a lot of pain in my sacroiliac joint, and the pain kept radiating and I couldn't walk. And, my Baba was a renowned healer, and he ignored me in the beginning. He didn't run in there because he was not like a typical grandfather. He was more of a spiritual teacher always. And he waited for the person to be ready. And, and then one day when I was crying, he came to me, stroked my hair and said, "What happened?" And I repeated the obvious, "I can't walk." Yeah. Yeah. And then Baba smiled and said, "You can't walk. Why don't you plan on flying?" Wow. And I don't know, it was a transmission and I feel like crying right now. But what he meant was that don't just focus on what you can't overcome. Focus on what you can become. Wow. And, many years later, I found out that I had a so-called genetic aberration and it causes, all kinds of inflammation and problems in my musculoskeletal system. But I've been flying with Baba since then. And so he taught me how to balance Vata dosha, not only physically, but even by thought management. So when pain would begin, I not only use oil to massage my body or eat herbs or take food, but I can even think certain thoughts and the pain goes away. So Baba taught me so many things and my body became my first school, you can say. Yeah. And I'm 50 now and I can run. And, and I still probably have the condition because I have a twinge here or a little pain there. And there are some days which it shows up but then I overcome it again. So it's an ongoing journey of using Ayurveda for the body, yoga for the mind, and the Vedic wisdom of Vedanta, which teaches me that I'm self, that I'm not my body and I'm not my mind, and I'm actually a spiritual being and I can bring healing attention to both these areas, both these instruments. So Baba became a wonderful teacher and he never let me become a victim. So when you meet me, Colette, recently I even had an accident and I lost some neck mobility and people thought I could get paralyzed as a result, but you'll see me and my life is just blossoming in spite of, more challenges that came my way again to my physical body. I'm going ahead with my life and, I think I'm flying.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's such an important lesson for us to learn in this lifetime that we are not our body and not our thoughts. It's a very hard concept to get our head around. That's the key, really, isn't it? To separate ourselves from those thoughts and that we are not confined by those or the body's physical ailments.
That is right. And being an Acharya or being from a Vedic lineage where you actually study the Vedas and you study all the sciences in an integrated manner. Mm-hmm. You don't just study, the doshas, or you don't study only the gunas, or you don't only study about the spiritual self and Atman and what happens after that, but you study all of it together and how they interweave allows us to really maximize the self-healing, self-actualizing, self-realizing potential. Yes. the Vedic sciences. And why I'm such a champion of Ayurveda, Colette, is that I found that if somebody were not even, introduced to all the Vedic sciences or the big spectrum, but Ayurveda alone, if you look at Charak Samhita, the ancient text from 2 BCE, it contains an invitation to all kinds of health. Physical health, psychological health, social health, environmental health, and ultimately spiritual health. It teaches us how to transcend suffering by recognizing who we are. It tells us that you have forgotten who you are, and you're an omniscient, omnipotent being. And I'm like, wow, is this a medical text or is this an invitation to have a blast? Yeah. I mean, what's going on here? That's the champion of Ayurveda, because I feel like the average person can go to Ayurveda and find everything. Right. And that's how I like to teach it. Ayurveda, not just as a physical science, but as a life guide to all our dimensions.
Absolutely. And that's the great thing about Ayurveda, because it really meets you where you are. Wherever you are on your journey to self-realization, it meets you at that point. And, Ayurveda has these great layers, right? So you can go as deep. You could start with the doshas, and then you can just uncover more and more and more as you go through your journey.
Exactly. That's the key. And it's, and doshas itself are so intelligent. I mean, the concept of doshas is mind-boggling, because Ayurveda was talking about, particle physics, really. It was talking about the behavior of subtle particles it's not gross matter, but it's subtle. And a lot of people, rejected the doshas because you can't see them. Mm-hmm. And that's where Western medicine is. It just believes in evidence-based medicine, but Ayurveda is practice-based medicine. And Ayurveda has shown through, generations of practice for 5,000 years that there are these forces in the body that you cannot see, but they are still made of the food you eat, and they make all the difference between health and ill-health. So, I mean, I have a crush on Ayurveda.
I do too. Shunya, I do too. And it's so interesting because, like you said, it's about inviting that healing within your own body, because the intelligence is already there. So when you have an illness or a disease, that you want to bring the body back into alignment. And you talk about in the preface of your book that health will manifest once you begin to live in alignment with nature's intelligence. And you also talked about how you watched your grandfather teach people the simple ways of aligning to nature on a daily basis by just igniting the powerful healing of the body, the mind, and the soul. And that the focus really wasn't on the symptoms, but your grandfather was rather connecting them to their own inner wisdom and connecting them to nature. Can you talk about the importance of that connection and how you saw your grandfather, and now you're in your own wisdom, how you bring that into your clients' lives?
Yeah, we actually have help. We are not just spiritual orphans roaming around on planet Earth, trying to find insurance and medical help. Right. Nature is a mother, and she's role modeling to us through the change in light and darkness, through a 24-hour rhythm, through a 12-month rhythm, through the rhythms of sleep cycle and wake cycle, hunger cycle and fullness cycle, elimination cycle and ingestion cycle. There are all these rhythms that are happening. And now that, the Nobel Prize has also gone to a scientist worked on these biorhythms. Yes. And it's, I have to say that Ayurveda was the first medical science that's completely built around these biocircadian rhythms that occur because the brain and the gut and the cells, they are all actually connected with the sun and the moon and wind, sun and moon. And so we're an organic creature connected with all of existence, which is then talking to us through nature's codes. Mm-hmm. And what happened was that in the forgetfulness and in our drive for survival and pleasure, we kind of somewhere lost that wisdom that not only in India, but we find that that alignment with nature, for example, in Chinese medicine, in Native American medicine, in Tibetan medicine, in Buddhist medicines, all ancient cultures had an era where the ancient men and women communicated with nature and wanted to read her book by studying her cycles and, coming out with some real deep wisdom. Fortunately, Ayurveda wisdom is great tradition and its books are available. It's not lost. We're not building Ayurveda facts and teachings based on memory. We actually have those scriptures or texts that are available today and translated in every language. You can buy them on Amazon. And each page of that is an upholding of these nature's principles. Mm-hmm. But people forget that. So what Baba did in his practice was, it was revolutionary. And I'm also leading a very different type of practice. Instead of people putting people on a prescriptive Ayurveda, where, you have a sleep problem, here you can take Jata Mansi as an herb, or you're having inflammation, you can take ashwagandha for your muscles. That's one way to go. But before that, he would make sure that they are respecting nature, they are waking up and they are saying hi to the rising sun. Yes. And they are, actually using their eyes to look at the moon, or, and then they are planting the ashwagandha root and growing it, and, and they're connected with it. Mm-hmm. Talking to it, and then in the right season, in fall, before the berries drop, then they are taking the root part of it and allowing the rest to grow back. So this is all a way to connect with nature. Beautiful. And during that 1 year when people could not actually eat the ashwagandha powder, but they had to grow it, you can see what an anti-inflammatory process that was. Mm-hmm. And people would be like, well, because Baba, nobody questioned Baba. Would say, here, you grow this and 1 year later you can take it, or grow it and just share it. Yeah. And people would say, what do you mean grow it and share it? I can't eat the herb because it's in the sharing and the growing and the sharing that you'll get cured, and people would. So Baba was teaching a greater coming back home to nature and spiritual wisdom. He was not just teaching here, take this pill or take this, even this ashwagandha. And so some of the serious questions that I have raised is that worldwide I notice that Ayurveda is being reduced to only merely being a natural medicine. Yes. And our quest has been reduced to a natural supplement. Mm-hmm. And these are some of the concerns I have raised in my preface. And then I have then gone ahead and shared my model of healing, where I've helped people recover from incurable conditions like ulcerative colitis or multiple sclerosis and, all these really difficult conditions without medicine, without herbs, aligning them with nature's rhythms. And that's why right here I'm in Bay Area, California, and we have charitable clinics running here. And for several years in a row now, we've been running medicine-less clinics. Where
wonderful.
From cancer to infertility, purely with the lifestyle and the food and the spiritual wisdom of Ayurveda. I mean, I'm not against herbs, but currently I feel like the human beings have overconsumed everything.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Absolutely.
Even promoting more consumerism
yes.
of Ayurveda. And as I mentioned in my book, 93% of herbs in India are, endangered now. Mm-hmm. So I have a whole series of classes, which I have taught, 22 herbs. I have 22 classes I taught, which have been chronicled by my foundation, where I taught how you can use, for example, a marigold, a marigold flower from beauty all the way to weight loss, all the way to, getting rid of hemorrhoids. Mm-hmm. So these are 6-week herbs. You grow, you reap, you grow again. So, or you grow your roses and you can use them from rosacea to pimples to depression. So I used garden remedies. These are called garden remedies, which are not so popular, in the medical model. They are not even taught in the universities in India, but I re-picked them up and I brought them into the consciousness of thousands of people. Like, hey, you want to, instead of running and, grabbing some Google, which is hard to get and it can be pure also, why don't you just grow some marigolds in your own home in an organic manner and drink that tea?
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's a bigger thing. So I have many agendas running through my life, but the basic agenda here is keep it simple, keep it honest, keep it real. That's all.
I love that, Shunya, and I am right there with you. I don't give out supplements. I don't do herbs. I'm just connecting people to the circadian rhythm in my practice and connecting them to yoga and mindfulness and breath work. I totally agree. I think we're in our society, we're still looking for that, what's the latest fad or trend? And it comes from somewhere in the Himalayas. And, it's we growing and connecting to your own medical system in your backyard, be it, flowers or herbs or plants, that you can grow and have that connection to the plant, putting that good energy in, and to nature, and then cooking it yourself if you're using it in foods. Absolutely. I think that is essential.
And let me use your podcast to tell people that don't buy anything that promises something exotic from the Himalayas, because the Himalayas are bleeding. They are polluted. They are disturbed. They are getting deforested, and all the herbs are being sent away worldwide for imports. So exactly what Colette said. Get your hands dirty, grow your own herbs in pots or your backyard, and cook your food. And you can't imagine how happy you will be and the planet will be.
Absolutely. And I think that connection to cooking the food is essential, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And fortunately, Ayurveda gives so many, recipes, and I've shared 27 from my own tradition lineage. And, and the best part is you don't have to necessarily eat Indian food. You could eat any cuisine and use the principles.
Yes.
So it adapts to every cuisine. That's the nice part of it.
Absolutely. And you gave great recipes in your book as well. Actually, I want to go back to one point we mentioned. We kind of glossed over that when we're talking about the circadian rhythms, just for listeners, in case they're wondering, 3 American scientists were awarded a Nobel Prize in medicine for their work on circadian rhythms in regards to medicine. So the new thing is circadian medicine, and they think that this is now the next step in medicine. So that's very exciting. And Ayurveda was preaching this over 5,000 years ago. Isn't that correct, Shunya?
Absolutely correct. So. And if the fraternity in India had proudly put up its case that we are the first circadian medicine, medicine known to humanity, Ayurveda would have been getting this Nobel Prize.
Yes.
But the Ayurveda fraternity in India is so colonially minded, enslaved, set up, trying to prove some kind of, evidence-based scenario of Ayurveda medicine, like Google working against cholesterol, or somehow trying to get this foot into the modern world, proving itself that we actually forgot the real treasure that we had. Process Ayurveda gets forgotten because a bulk of the Ayurveda practitioners are always trying to somehow be apologetic to the mainstream medicine and not really stand proud on what was original. Ayurveda is original medicine and should not be compared to anything else, but really be showcased. So as an advisor to the government, these are kind of points I am bringing up about pride in Ayurveda. And I've recommended them creating pride events. And, some people were sneakily smiling about the word pride. And I said, this is time for pride for everyone. The gays and the lesbians and the blacks and the whites and the browns and all kinds of medicine. We all have to be proud in who we are, Colette.
I love it. I'm sitting here with my hands waving in the air for you. I love it. Absolutely. Pride in your true, authentic self. Absolutely. And, like you said, it's a shame that there's that Ayurveda is wanting to prove itself almost, but that when the proof is in the experience.
Yes.
That's what Ayurveda teaches us, right? Just try it and see. You're just taking natural food and herbs and see how it affects your body.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you give some wonderful examples in the book, Shunya, about how you've seen the Ayurveda system of healing bring out the best in your clients and they go from powerlessness to power. Is there a story you could share with us today, that, you've seen an example of just using this connection to the circadian rhythms, to nature, and how it's vastly improved a client's life?
Yeah, I have so many examples. I think as a human being, if I were to wonder what is the main area in my own life that I have come to work with and to share, then I think it would be power. Mm-hmm. When I was born in this great family, just by nature, I didn't own my voice. Not because my family told me not to own my voice. This must have been my past life thing, Okay. Hearing me today, that would be hard to believe. But I was filled with self-doubt for many, many decades, I would say. But through those decades, I was not suffering. Every day was getting better because I was using the knowledge of Baba to convert it from a received knowledge into my own conviction. And as the knowledge that I received from Baba became my conviction, I became powerful in a spiritual way. I became physically healthy in spite of challenges and accidents. I became, my relationships, all of them started thriving. And I think, like I said, I feel like I'm flying, without trying to sound wing. And I tend to give this power. So as a teacher, as a spiritual teacher, I like to empower my students. I like to remind them that that power is their birthright. Mm-hmm. And power includes health, beauty, comfort, all kinds of power, awakening knowledge. So a lot of the students who come to me or people who come to me they might be suffering from, IBS or depression or eating disorders or, acne or, PMS. But when I look deeper, I always find that there is a self-abandonment that's gone on underneath that. So I have countless cases, but I, for example, shared the case of a student called Ananta Ripa Ajmera. She was a Indian American growing up in East Coast, and she grew up, but by teenage she had developed eating disorders. And by the time she came to me in her mid-20s, everything was going wrong with her. She had depression. She still had some residue of the eating disorder, control issues, acne, terrible stomach aches for which she had to use, Advil and other things, and, very poor self-esteem and, difficult relationships with her parents and pretty much with everybody, a sense of isolation. And yet, when I looked at her, she had studied yoga at some other school, and I saw that, as part of her give back, she was teaching in prisons occasionally, and she made an impact. But then the woman who was teaching was stronger, but the woman who came back after the teaching, she would again reduce to being a small person. So I realized that when she was teaching knowledge, she grew. But then when she was outside it, she became really small and shrunk, and all her symptoms would come back. So when she remained my student, I kept reminding her that, power is her birthright. She's the self. She need not relate with all the stories around her life. She can reinvent herself every day. Those difficult relationships, parents, whatever was the problem, I don't know. But now I don't remember. But the point is that they were all karmic lessons for her to wake up and not remain sleepwalking behavior. And then she used Ayurveda for her doshas. She used foods based on seasons and circadian rhythms. She started growing herbs. She started, leading a full immersion life. And today, she has become certified to teach not only Ayurveda and yoga in one prison, but across prisons in California. She and one of my students were the first people together who for the first time took Ayurveda to Stanford University's Health Improvement Program. And their program, my students' Ayurveda program, became, approved for being taught every year at Stanford University.
Wow, that's a great...
Then this young woman who was once so weak and she would cry often and wait around for 5 minutes of my time so I could counsel her. This woman has now spoken at the United Nations also. The same woman, Ananta, has written a book which became a triple bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories of Ayurveda, spiritual, and one more, alternative health. And her book's name is The Ayurveda Way.
Oh, wow. Oh, yes, I've heard of that book. Yes.
So this is the power from powerlessness to power. I have a story there also. And this was a girl who would, if she started crying, she'd keep crying because she had so much sorrow, so much misery. And right now, if you look at her photos in that book, if you meet her, there is not one spot on her skin. She doesn't even need Ayurveda herbs anymore. She is also flying.
Wow.
And that's the point. And not only she's flying in her career, but even in my organization, in my not-for-profit foundation, as my Shishya or long-term disciple and student, she is a central pillar, making sure that my organization continues its give back to society. So she's doing end amounts of volunteer work and service. So I think this is one of the stories, and then I have countless stories of powerlessness to power. And in conclusion, Colette, I can say that what I learned from Baba was that we are the all-powerful supreme being self. And if we live any reduced versions of that, then it creates disease to wake us up.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And all those lessons and illnesses and disease are just part of the journey to self-realization for our truth to blossom.
Yes.
And to get our wings, as you say. Absolutely. And it's so true that it has to be a holistic approach. And that's what I love about Ayurveda. It looks at every aspect of your life, because it's not necessarily just the food you're eating or the lifestyle you're leading, but what undigested emotions or events or what is there inside of you that needs to come out. And that in itself could be causing stress in the body.
And what a medicine that allows us to look at all of this.
Yeah. Well,
and I think people like you are doing a great service through your podcast, not only through your own study and your own practice, but now through your podcast. This is the time has come to distribute this message far and wide.
Oh, thank you. That I get to speak to wonderful people like you in the process. And now, getting back to your book, which I absolutely adore, and I have to tell you, I have so much things underlined and highlighted in this book. It's unbelievable. But I want you to talk about how it's beautifully written. You tell about your journey with your own health and your grandfather, and it's about introducing people to this ancient wisdom of Ayurveda, and you give lots of practical information as well. How would you like people to use this book, the Ayurveda Lifestyle Wisdom?
I think if they read the first 2-3 chapters, beginning with the preface, they would really get me. Like, they'll understand, like they'd feel like, just like after this podcast, it feels very intimate to listen to a podcast. Especially with such a warm hostess like you.
Oh, thank you.
So, people get to know the author. And thereafter, I think after preface, intro, and chapter 1, they can jump into any chapter they want.
Yes.
Like if they want to look at sleep first, or exercise, or food rules, or beauty, or, bathing rituals. But I think the first 3, preface, intro, and chapter 1, just kind of develop a relationship between me and my readers, and develop some of my eyes, and they can appreciate what I want to tell them. So I really do hope that they begin there. And then it's just fun wherever they want to go. And I do believe that this book is a book people will use all their life,
Yes.
because compendium, yeah.
And is there a piece of Ayurvedic wisdom or advice that you would like to give the listeners today? Is there one thing that you think would really start them on their journey, or is the top tip that you give? I know there's so much wisdom, but is there something that you could share with us today?
The top tip is, there is a principle in Ayurveda, and it's a little bit of a tongue twister in Sanskrit, but I'll say it anyway. And it's called Swabhavo Paramvad, which means that you are a self-healing entity. And knowing this and contemplating upon it, whether you remember the Sanskrit or not, but the fact that an ancient wisdom tradition that has never died out, continues to be more and more popular, continues to deliver results, is saying that you're a self-healing entity is something. And so it's just a matter of what right food, what thought, what food, and what practice can just can make me reclaim my inner health.
Yes.
That's all. And I think that's the top tip. So don't give up. Remain hopeful. And if you're new to Ayurveda, then, do give yourself the gift of exploring it in the right way. And you will be surprised. Wait to be surprised. So I think at this point in humanity, Colette, hopelessness is at its peak.
Yes.
And I just want to say that I, Colette, the student I talked about, Ananta, and countless millions of people across the globe have found hope. And it's real. And I hope people resort to Ayurveda for being happy again.
And it's really about, like you said, not outsourcing yourself or outsourcing your health, but going inward and seeing the wealth of knowledge you already have in you and studying yourself. Like, what better study in life is there than to really study yourself? And once you study yourself, then I feel you get those wings and you get that power.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a selfishness to kind of be so consumed. But Baba said that this is the right kind of selfishness because it's dharma.
Yes.
It's the right thing to be healthy because one healthy person makes the family and society healthy. So if you have to be selfish anywhere, be selfish in your health promoting measures and lifestyle.
Yes, because when you have that health, then you can go out there and help others.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, Shunya, it's been such a pleasure. And before we finish up today, is there any other information you would like to share with the listeners or any offerings that you have or information about your wonderful school that you would like to share?
Well, my school is Vedika Global, Vedika Global, and you can find me on vedikaglobal.org. You can find me also on acharyashunya.com. And my book is Ayurveda Lifestyle Wisdom on Amazon. You can find it. And I teach Ayurveda, I teach yoga philosophy and spirituality. And, it's all donation-based study. And so anybody who's eager to find out more can check out these websites. I'm glad that my lineage now has a website.
Yes. And a beautiful website at that.
Thank you.
Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes for everybody also.
Yeah. That's about it, and I'm an accessible teacher and thank you so much for having me as a guest. I really enjoyed. I could feel your energy. I could feel your openness and I enjoyed myself.
Thank you, Shunya. It's been a great honor to chat with you and you have empowered me today. Wish you all the best in your journey also.
Thank you so much, Kali.
Thank you, Shunya. Take good care. Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Acharya Shunya. I know I certainly did. It was such a pleasure. And you will find all the links in the show notes, so please check them out. Also, if you're enjoying the content of the show and you'd like to leave a ratings and review, please do so in iTunes. I would greatly appreciate it, and it also helps others to find the show. Take good care of yourself and be well.